40% of Iraq and let Iraq return to a rule of law and democracy gradually. Within the US government, and I can only speak for the US government, we looked at Iraq as a shattered country. Look at the dates: 1258, Mongol invasion. A second one, 1401, immediately followed in the 16th century by the Ottomans. And then you had the Ottoman-Persian wars that went on. Iraq was a shattered country which was held together by force. It was also a country prey to foreign interference, namely Iran. In the 60s and 70s, the CIA and the Shah attempted to get rid of Saddam using the Kurds. The Kurds at that point, I will be very politically incorrect, stopped being Iraqis because they sided with Iran. We now have a government in Baghdad. Most of the members were on Iranian payroll at one time or another. This is not the time for an American occupation and a British occupation to impose a democracy, because any person we put in or government will look as a foreign government. It will be the continued interference in Iraqi history that goes back to 1258, to the Mongol invasion. We need a general in Iraq who can follow the rule of law but act rationally.
Robert Baer, thank you very much. 8 million Iraqis risked death, intimidation, threats to vote in elections. You now want to tell them it was all a waste of time and forget it. You think they would let you do that?
You look at the violence in Iraq. We're talking about 25% of the population is displaced or in exile because right now
You think those 8 million people wouldn't want to vote again? For the first three elections in 50 years?
They're going to have to wait because right now they do not want to live with each other. The Shia, the Sunni, the Turkmen, the Kurds, they are not prepared to live with each other, let alone move into a democracy.
And yet 65% of the country thinks it's going in the right direction.
That's going in the right direction because they're dividing, they're partitioning. But if we want to hold Iraq together, you have to suspend democracy. For how many years, I can't tell you, but you must suspend it.
Those 8 million don't want that, do they?
We don't know.
Who says you can't have a civil war?
We don't know that the Shia are not voting, in effect, for a Shia state. You look at what happened in Najaf this weekend. These are people that are committed to their sect. They are voting for their sect. If you're Shia and you all of a sudden have been offered Baghdad, a city that you've been excluded from 680, from the murder of the Prophet's grandson, of course you're going to vote, yes, I want, the Shia have won, but it's not going to add or contribute to a united Iraq.
Countries emerge from civil wars and have democracies in the end. Why not this one?
Look at Bosnia. It never came back together. Yugoslavia.
Never.
If the premise is we want to hold
Never.
Iraq,
It's been 10, 12 years. That's not never.
No,
there's time. It takes time.
It's still divided.
It's an evolutionary process, democracy, isn't it? Those 8 million people, you really think you can ram the genie back in the bottle after that?
In 1933, democracy voted in Adolf Hitler. It doesn't mean democracy is always right, and sometimes you have to suspend it.
Robert Baer, thank you very much indeed. Now let me call please on George Galloway to speak against the motion.
This is a motion that's asking you to endorse a new dictatorship. Dictatorship is the curse of the Arab world. Dictatorship, almost without exception, from Marrakesh to Bahrain, is the reason that the Arabs are divided and weak, and the rulers and the big powers are stealing their wealth. Dictatorship has been a complete disaster for the Arabs, and you're being invited to endorse an additional dictatorship now. Think what the Arabs could be if they were free. From the Atlantic to the Gulf, all these people, all this oil, all this gas, one God, one language, one culture. Shahab Arabi Wahad, Wahad. That's what we need. One free Arab people. The idea that a dictator is going to solve the problem now that we have in Iraq. Which dictator? Which one? Which of the gangs of New York that we've placed in power in Baghdad is going to be the dictator? Saddam Hussein cannot be dug up from the ground. It will not be him who will be the new dictator. Who will it be? You take your pick. I don't fancy any of them myself. My friend and my lawyer, Sabah al-Mukhtar, made the point earlier. There is a war of liberation now in Iraq, and I wholeheartedly support it. But it's not a war of liberation in order to install a new dictator. It's a war of liberation, surely, so that Iraq can be free and sovereign and dignified. And the only way to do that is by making the agreements and the alliances and the social peace between the different trends in Iraq. And that cannot be done at the point of a gun or the point of a bayonet. So, reject the idea that dictatorship is the way forward. The Arabs unchained will have to be the Arabs democratic.